They told us the chains would be the first thing we felt in England. The sound came anyway. Metal against metal. A memory, not reality. Anna Keller sat in the back of the military truck, her hands resting quietly in her lap, fingers slightly curled as if waiting for iron that had not yet arrived. The engine rumbled beneath her boots, steady, indifferent, carrying them through streets she could not yet see. Somewhere ahead, a city existed. A British city. She had imagined it 100 times during the long nights in the camp. Cold. Hostile. Watching. The other women sat beside her in silence, their shoulders tight, their breaths shallow and measured. No one spoke. They had already said everything in whispers before dawn. What would happen? How they would be treated? What to expect? Chains. Always chains. It was what they had been told. It was what they believed. The truck slowed. The change in motion was subtle, but every body in the back felt it at once. Muscles tightened. Eyes lowered. Anna's gaze dropped to her wrists. Bare. Still bare. That was wrong. The truck came to a full stop with a soft mechanical sigh, like something exhaling after holding its breath too long. No shouting followed. No orders barked through clenched teeth. Just the faint sound of footsteps somewhere outside. Calm. Unhurried. Anna's pulse climbed anyway. This was the moment. This was when it would begin. She flexed her fingers once, preparing for the cold bite of metal. Nothing came. The latch clicked. The doors opened. Light spilled in, pale and diffused through a sky that seemed permanently covered in soft gray. London. It didn't look like the city she had imagined. It wasn't grand or threatening. It was quiet. Buildings stood close together, worn but standing. Windows intact. People moved along the sidewalks, coats pulled tight, heads slightly bowed against the chill. No one rushed forward. No one gathered. No one shouted. The guard at the back of the truck stepped aside. Not aggressively. Not even firmly. Just aside. Anna didn't move. None of them did. They waited. For the command. For the signal. For something to make sense of this. It didn't come. One of the women shifted, her boot scraping softly against the metal floor. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Anna inhaled slowly. The air smelled different here. Damp. Clean. Not like the camp. Not like confinement. She looked again at her wrists. Still bare. Her mind rejected it. This was a delay. A tactic. They would be chained once they stepped down. That made sense. That restored order to the world. She placed one foot toward the edge of the truck. Hesitated. Then lowered herself down. The ground felt solid. Too solid. No resistance. No restraint. No one grabbed her arms. No one forced her into line. The other women followed, one by one, each movement careful, controlled, as if sudden motion might trigger something hidden. Anna stood there, waiting for the wait. For the moment the illusion would break. It didn't. A man walked past her. Civilian. Mid-40s maybe. Hat pulled low. He glanced in her direction for less than a second, then checked his wristwatch and kept moving. No reaction. No recognition. No hatred. That was worse. Her chest tightened. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. Across the street, a woman adjusted a basket on her arm, speaking softly to a child at her side. The child laughed. Laughed. The sound cut through Anna's thoughts like something fragile and impossible. She turned her head slightly, scanning for danger, for signs of deception. There were none. Just people. Living. Moving. Existing in a rhythm that did not include her. The absence of hostility pressed in heavier than any threat. Her breathing grew shallow. This was wrong. Something inside her resisted it, searched desperately for the familiar structure of fear and control. Without it, there was nothing to hold on to. A figure approached from her left. An older woman. Slow steps. Steady. Anna's body reacted instantly, shoulders tightening, hands pulling slightly inward. This was it. The confrontation. The test. The woman stopped a few feet away, close enough that Anna could see the lines on her face, the slight tremor in her hand as she adjusted her grip on the basket. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the woman reached in, took out a small piece of bread, and held it out. No words. No expression of anger. Just the simple act. Anna stared at it. Her mind refused to process what she was seeing. Bread. Offered. Freely. This had to be a trick. A way to provoke a reaction. To test obedience. To confirm guilt. She didn't move. The woman didn't insist. She simply held it there, patient, as if time itself had slowed around them. Then, gently, She placed the bread into Anna's hands and stepped back. Not waiting. Not watching. She turned and walked away. Just like that. Anna's fingers closed around it automatically. Warm. Real. Her throat tightened. She didn't lift it. Didn't dare. A voice came from behind her. Calm. Measured. You're safe here. She turned. A British officer stood a few steps away. Captain James Whitmore. His posture was straight, but not rigid. His eyes steady, but not hard. He wasn't watching her like an enemy. He was observing. Managing. Present. Nothing more. Anna looked back at her hands. At the bread. At her wrists. Still bare. No chains. No force. No hatred. The world she had prepared for did not exist here. And that realization, quiet and undeniable, unsettled her more than anything she had ever feared. Anna did not eat the bread. Not at first. She held it the way one might hold something fragile, something that could disappear if touched too quickly. Her fingers tightened slightly, then loosened again, unsure of what this object meant in a place where nothing behaved the way it should. Around her, the city continued without interruption. Footsteps passed. A bicycle rolled by with a soft metallic hum. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang. Not loud, not urgent, just present. Time moved forward here, untouched by her confusion. The other women stood close, their formation instinctive, drawn together by shared uncertainty. One of them, Elise, leaned slightly toward Anna, her voice barely more than breath. Do not eat it. Anna did not respond. Her eyes remained on the bread. The surface was uneven, slightly cracked, still warm from wherever it had come from. That warmth unsettled her more than anything else. Food was supposed to be measured, controlled, given with purpose. This had been given without instruction, without expectation. That made it dangerous. Anna lifted her gaze slowly. Captain Whitmore had not moved. He stood a few feet away, hands resting calmly at his sides, his expression unchanged. He was not watching them the way guards usually did. There was no calculation in his eyes, no anticipation of mistake. Just presence. Steady. Observant. She studied him, searching for signs she understood. Authority. Control. Distance. They were there, but softened, as if shaped by something else. Something she could not name. You may eat, he said after a moment, his voice even, almost quiet. Not a command. Not an order. A statement. That was worse. Anna felt her chest tighten again. Orders were easier. Orders gave structure. This offered none. Her hand moved slightly. The bread rose a few inches, then stopped. Her mind resisted. Every lesson, every warning, every image she had been given pushed against the motion. This is how it begins. This is how they test you. She lowered it again. Across the street, the child she had noticed earlier broke free from his mother's hand and ran a few steps ahead, laughing at something only he understood. The mother called out, not sharply, but with a tone of gentle correction. The child stopped, turned, and waited. No fear. No urgency. Just trust. Anna watched that small exchange, her thoughts slowing, shifting. Trust. The word felt foreign. Heavy. She looked back at the bread, then at her wrist. Bare. The absence of weight there was becoming louder, more present with each passing second. It was not relief. Not yet. It was imbalance. As if something essential had been removed without explanation. She lifted the bread again. This time, she did not stop. The motion was small, deliberate. She brought it closer, hesitated once more, then took a bite. The texture was soft, the taste simple. Real. Nothing happened. No reaction from the people around her. No signal. No correction. Just the quiet continuation of a city that did not revolve around her existence. She chewed slowly. Each movement felt amplified, as if her body expected interruption. It did not come. Elise watched her, eyes wide, then looked away, as if unable to process what she had just seen. Anna swallowed. The warmth spread through her in a way that was unfamiliar, not just physical, but something deeper, something that touched a part of her she had kept guarded for too long. She lowered her hand, still holding the remaining piece. Her breathing steadied slightly. Captain Whitmore nodded once. A small gesture, almost imperceptible. Then he turned his head, glancing down the street as if checking time. Not people. Not prisoners. Time. We will walk, he said. Again, not an order. A direction. Anna hesitated. Walk. Through the city. Unrestrained. The word itself felt unreal. The group began to move, slow at first, their steps cautious, synchronized by habit. Anna followed, her gaze fixed ahead, then drifting, taking in fragments of a world that did not align with anything she had known. Storefronts with glass windows reflecting gray light. A man arranging books in a display. A woman adjusting flowers outside a small shop, her hands careful, precise. No one stopped them. No one pointed. No one reacted beyond a passing glance that held no weight. Anna's steps grew more uncertain, not less. Each second that passed without incident increased the tension inside her. This was not normal. This was not safe. Safety required control. This was something else. Something undefined. They turned a corner. The street narrowed slightly. The buildings closer, the sound softer. A clock hung above a doorway, its hands marking time with quiet authority. Anna looked at it, then at Whitmore. He was not watching them. He was walking beside them. That difference settled heavily in her mind. Beside, not above, not behind. Beside, the realization did not bring comfort. It brought questions. Too many. Questions without answers. She tightened her grip on the bread, then slowly, almost unconsciously, loosened it again. Her fingers brushed against her wrist once more. Still nothing. No metal. No weight. Just skin. Just absence. And for the first time, that absence did not feel like a mistake. It felt intentional. They walked for nearly half a mile before Anna realized something else was missing. No one was counting them. No voice called numbers. No one checked their position in line. The rhythm of surveillance she had grown used to simply did not exist here. The absence of it pressed against her thoughts like a silence too loud to ignore. She slowed slightly, just enough to feel the difference. No correction came. No hand reached for her shoulder. No warning followed. She could stop if she wanted to. The realization came slowly, then all at once. She did not stop. Not because she could not, but because she did not know what stopping meant anymore. The group continued forward, their formation loosening without instruction, each step less synchronized than the last. Elise drifted half a pace behind, her eyes scanning constantly, searching for the moment the illusion would break. It did not. Anna's gaze moved across the street again, taking in details she had ignored before. A shop window filled with neatly arranged shoes, polished, aligned with care. A man. Inside adjusted one slightly, then stepped back, studying his work with quiet satisfaction. No urgency. No fear. Just attention to something small. Anna felt something shift in her chest, something subtle but undeniable. The world here operated on different priorities. They passed a narrow alley where a cat sat perched on a wooden crate, its tail flicking lazily as it watched them without interest. Even the animal did not react. Anna almost smiled. Almost. The feeling surprised her, and she quickly pushed it away, as if it were something she was not allowed to have. Ahead, the street opened into a small square. Not large, perhaps 40 feet across, but open enough to let the gray sky stretch wider above them. A bench stood near the center, worn from years of use. An elderly man sat there, hands folded over a cane, his gaze directed not at them, but at the empty space in front of him. As they approached, his eyes lifted slightly, meeting Anna's for a brief moment. There was no recognition there. No judgment. Just acknowledgement. Then his gaze returned to the quiet space he had been watching before. Anna's steps faltered. Not enough to stop, but enough to feel the break in her own rhythm. She had expected eyes. Always eyes. Watching. Measuring. Defining. But here, she was unseen. Or perhaps more unsettling, seen without meaning. Captain Whitmore slowed near the edge of the square. He turned slightly, not blocking their path, not directing them, simply positioning himself where he could observe both them and the space around them. "You may sit," he said, gesturing toward the bench and the low stone edge that framed part of the square. Again, not an order. An option. The word echoed in Anna's mind. Option. She had not heard that word used in relation to her in a long time. The women hesitated, exchanging brief glances, silent questions passing between them. Finally, one of them stepped forward, then another, until a few sat cautiously along the stone edge. Anna remained standing for a moment longer. Sitting felt exposed. Too relaxed. Too open. But her legs were beginning to feel the distance they had walked, and the unfamiliar tension of uncertainty had drained more from her than she realized. Slowly, she lowered herself onto the stone. The surface was cool beneath her, solid, grounding. She placed the remaining piece of bread beside her, her hand lingering near it as if it might disappear. The square remained quiet. A cart rolled by at the far end, its wheels creaking softly. A woman crossed from one side to the other, carrying a small bundle wrapped in cloth. No one approached them. No one avoided them either. They simply existed within the same space, parallel lives moving without collision. Anna leaned forward slightly, her elbows resting on her knees, her hands loosely clasped. Her right thumb brushed against her left wrist again, still bare. The gesture had become automatic now, a quiet check, a confirmation of something she still did not fully accept. Do you understand what is happening? Elise's voice came from beside her, low, careful. Anna did not answer immediately. She watched the movement of a cloud drifting slowly across the sky, its edges soft, almost dissolving into the gray. No, she said finally. The honesty of it felt strange on her tongue. Elise nodded slightly, as if that answer had been expected. It is not right, Elise whispered. Anna turned her head, studying her friend's face. The tension there, the resistance, the refusal to accept what they were seeing. Anna understood it. She felt it too. But something inside her was beginning to loosen, just slightly, like a knot that had been pulled too tight for too long. Across the square, a young boy approached the bench where the elderly man sat. He held something in his hand, small and indistinct from this distance. He spoke, his voice soft but animated. The old man listened, then smiled. A real smile. Not forced. Not cautious. Simple. Human. Anna watched that exchange, her breathing slowing, her thoughts shifting again. This was not performance. Not for them. Not for anyone. It simply was. Captain Whitmore stepped closer, his boots making a soft sound against the stone. He stopped a few feet from Anna, his gaze following hers toward the boy and the old man. London did not stop being a city because of the war, he said quietly. Anna looked up at him. His tone was not defensive, not proud, just factual. People still live here. They still choose how they behave. Choose. The words settled into her mind with weight. Choice had not been part of her world for a long time. Not real choice. Only obedience. Only survival. She looked down. At her hands again. At the absence of metal. At the freedom that had been placed there without explanation. Slowly, almost without thinking, she picked up the remaining piece of bread and took another bite. This time, she did not hesitate. She chewed, swallowed, and felt the warmth settle into her again, steady, grounding. She looked up once more, her gaze moving across the square, across the people who did not see her as something to be controlled or feared. And for the first time since stepping off the truck, the question in her mind began to change. Not what will they do to us, but why are they not? The square did not change, but something inside Anna did. It was small at first, almost unnoticeable, like the moment before a breath becomes conscious. She sat still, her hands resting loosely now, no longer guarding the bread as if it might betray her. Around her, the world continued its quiet rhythm. A door opened somewhere behind them. Footsteps crossed the stone. A distant carriage rolled past, the sound of its wheels softened by distance and time. Nothing demanded her attention, and that absence of demand began to feel less like a threat and more like space. Elise shifted beside her, her posture still rigid, her eyes moving constantly, scanning for the pattern that would make sense of all this. They are waiting, she whispered. Anna turned slightly. For what? Elise hesitated. For us to forget. The words settled between them, heavy, uncertain. Anna considered them. Forget. The idea felt wrong, incomplete. This was not forgetting. This was something else. She looked down at her wrist again, not out of habit this time, but with intention. The skin there was pale, marked only by faint impressions left from earlier days, days when metal had defined her movement, her posture, her place. Those marks were fading, slowly, quietly, as if time itself was erasing them without asking permission. She pressed her fingers lightly against the spot, feeling nothing but her own pulse. Steady, present. Her breath followed it, slower now, deeper. Across the square, the boy had sat down beside the elderly man. They spoke in low voices, their conversation unremarkable, ordinary. The boy held up what he had been carrying earlier. A small wooden toy, carved roughly but with care. The old man examined it, nodding, then adjusted something with his fingers, improving it in a way that only experience allowed. The boy watched closely, absorbing the movement, the correction, the quiet lesson. Anna leaned forward slightly, drawn to the simplicity of it. There was no performance there. No audience. Just two people sharing a moment that did not need to be anything more than what it was. Captain Whitmore remained nearby, his presence steady, unobtrusive. He did not interrupt. He did not direct. He allowed the moment to exist. That, more than anything, unsettled Anna. Authority, in her experience, had always filled space. It had always shaped, controlled, defined. Here it stepped back. It allowed. She lifted her gaze to him again, studying the lines of his face, the way his eyes moved, not with suspicion, but with awareness. He noticed things, not to control them, but to understand them. That difference began to take shape in her mind, slowly, carefully, like something fragile being assembled piece by piece. Why? The word left her before she could stop it. It was quiet, almost lost in the ambient sounds of the square, but Whitmore heard it. He turned his head slightly, meeting her gaze. Why what? He asked. Anna hesitated. The question was larger than the single word she had spoken. It carried everything she had not been able to articulate since stepping off the truck. She searched for the right way to frame it, then gave up on precision. Why no chains? She asked. The simplicity of it felt almost inadequate, but it was enough. Whitmore considered her for a moment, not rushing to answer, not filling the silence unnecessarily. He glanced briefly at her wrist, then back to her face. Because you do not need them, he said. The answer landed quietly, but its weight was immediate. Anna frowned slightly, not in disagreement, but in confusion. We are prisoners, she said, the word still carrying its old definition, its old boundaries. Whitmore nodded once. Yes. He did not deny it. He did not soften it. He simply acknowledged it. Then, Anna began, then stopped. The rest of the sentence did not form. The logic she had relied on no longer held. Whitmore took a small step closer, not closing the distance entirely, but enough to shift the conversation from observation to engagement. Being a prisoner does not remove your humanity, he said. His voice remained calm, measured, but there was something else there now. Not emotion exactly, but conviction. Chains are used when they are necessary, not when they are expected. Anna held his gaze, the words moving through her slowly, encountering resistance, then settling, then shifting something deeper. Necessary. Expected. The distinction was simple, but it changed everything. She looked down again, at her hands, at the absence that had defined the past hour. For the first time, she considered the possibility that it was not an oversight, not a delay, not a tactic. It was a decision. Someone had chosen this. The realization brought a different kind of weight. Not fear, not confusion, responsibility. She exhaled slowly, her shoulders lowering just a fraction, the tension easing in a way she had not allowed before. Across the square, the boy stood, clutching the toy, and ran a few steps before stopping, turning back to wave at the old man. The old man raised his hand in return, a small gesture, but complete. The exchange ended without ceremony, without significance beyond itself. Anna watched it, her thoughts quieting, her focus narrowing to the present moment in a way she had not experienced in a long time. She picked up the last piece of bread, looked at it briefly, then finished it. No hesitation, no calculation, just the act itself. When she swallowed, she felt the warmth settle into her again, steady, grounding, real. She placed her hands on her knees, her fingers relaxed, no longer curled inward. The absence at her wrists no longer felt like a void. It felt like space. And for the first time, she did not try to fill it. The word necessary did not leave her. It stayed, quiet but persistent, moving through her thoughts as they rose from the stone edge and began to walk again. No command had been given, yet the group shifted forward almost at the same moment, as if something unspoken had passed between them. Anna stepped beside Elise this time, not behind, not ahead, just beside. The difference was small. It felt larger than it should have. The square fell behind them, its stillness lingering like a memory that had not fully settled. The street ahead curved gently, leading them into a narrower passage where the buildings leaned closer, their windows reflecting faint traces of movement. Anna noticed how the reflections did not distort her. They simply showed her as she was. No uniform label, no number, just a figure moving through space. She slowed for a fraction of a second, watching her own reflection pass by in the glass. It was unfamiliar, not because of how she looked, but because of how she was allowed to exist. The group continued, their footsteps uneven now, no longer bound by the rigid timing that had once defined them. A cart stood partially blocking the sidewalk ahead, stacked with crates of vegetables, their colors muted under the gray sky, but still vibrant in their own quiet way. A man stood beside it, adjusting one of the crates, his hands steady, his focus entirely on the task in front of him. As Anna approached, she instinctively shifted to the side, creating space, anticipating instruction or correction. The man glanced up briefly, then stepped back, allowing them to pass without comment. The movement was simple, respectful, unforced. Anna felt it register somewhere deeper than she expected. Space given, not taken, not enforced, given. Elise noticed it too. They move for us, she said under her breath, her tone uncertain, almost suspicious. Anna considered the words, then shook her head slightly. No, she said quietly. They move for themselves. The distinction mattered, though she could not fully explain why. They turned another corner, and the street opened slightly, revealing a row of small shops. One displayed books, their spines aligned in careful order behind the glass. Another held fabrics, soft textures draped in layers, colors muted but deliberate. Anna's eyes lingered on the fabrics for a moment, the way they folded, the way light touched them. It reminded her of something distant, something before all of this, something she could not fully bring into focus. She let the thought pass. Captain Whitmore walked a few steps ahead now, not leading, not directing, simply moving with purpose. Anna watched the space he left between himself and the group. It was consistent, intentional, enough to allow movement, but not enough to lose connection. Control without pressure, presence without dominance. The realization settled quietly, aligning with what he had said before. Power is restraint. She did not have the words for it yet, but she felt the shape of it forming. A door opened suddenly to her right, and a woman stepped out, carrying a small bundle wrapped in cloth. The motion was quick, unexpected. Anna's body reacted before her mind could intervene. Her shoulders tightened, her breath caught, her hand instinctively moving toward her wrist as if to brace for something that was no longer there. The woman paused, noticing the reaction. For a brief moment, their eyes met. The woman's expression did not harden. It softened, just slightly. She adjusted her grip on the bundle, then stepped back, giving Anna more space than necessary, as if acknowledging something she could not fully see but somehow understood. Anna stood still for a second longer than the moment required, then exhaled slowly. The tension in her shoulders released, not completely, but enough. She lowered her hand, her fingers brushing lightly against her wrist again. Still nothing. But this time, the gesture carried less urgency, more awareness. Elise had seen it. You still expect it, she said quietly. Anna nodded once. Yes. There was no shame in the answer, just truth. They continued walking. The rhythm of the city began to settle around them, not as something separate, but as something they were moving within. The sounds became less sharp, less foreign. Footsteps blended. Voices softened into background. Even the distant hum of movement took on a steadiness that no longer felt threatening. Anna's breathing matched it, gradually, unconsciously. They reached a crossing where the street widened, and a small flow of people moved in different directions, intersecting paths without collision. No one guided them. No one directed the flow. Yet it worked. People adjusted, shifted, slowed, accelerated, all without instruction. Anna watched it closely, the way movement responded to movement, the way space was negotiated without force. It was a system, just not one she had known. Captain Whitmore stopped at the edge of the crossing, not to halt them, but to observe. Anna stopped beside him this time, not because she had to, but because she chose to. The difference registered immediately. He glanced at her, a brief acknowledgement, then returned his attention to the street. Watch, he said quietly. Anna did. A man carrying a stack of papers adjusted his path slightly to avoid a woman pushing a small cart. The woman slowed just enough to let him pass. Neither spoke. Neither signaled. The exchange was seamless. Necessary, not expected. Anna felt the words return, clearer now. Necessary. She looked down at her hands again, at the space where metal had once defined her. Then she looked up, at the movement around her, at the choices being made in real time, small, unspoken, but real. For the first time, the absence at her wrists did not feel like something missing. It felt like something that had been given, and she was beginning to understand what it required in return. Anna stepped forward when the space opened, not because anyone told her to, but because she understood the movement now. It was not command. It was response. The crossing flowed around her, not against her, and for a brief moment, she felt what it meant to move without resistance. It was unfamiliar, but it was not frightening anymore. Captain Whitmore continued ahead, his pace unchanged, his presence steady in a way that no longer felt like supervision. It felt like something else, something quieter. They crossed the street without interruption. No whistle, no raised hand, no authority forcing order into place. Just people adjusting, making room, continuing. On the other side, the pavement felt the same, but Anna noticed her step had changed. It was lighter, not free, not yet, but no longer braced. That alone felt like a shift she could not ignore. They moved along a wider avenue now, the buildings taller, the windows reflecting more sky than before. A bus passed in the distance, its engine low and constant, carrying people who looked out without noticing them. Anna watched the faces through the glass. Some tired, some focused, some simply present. None of them reacted. That absence was becoming something she could understand. Not indifference, not rejection, just distance. A natural distance that did not need to be closed. Beside her, Elise remained tense, though her steps had begun to match the rhythm of the street. "This is wrong," she said again, but her voice had changed. It carried less certainty now, more question. Anna did not answer immediately. She watched a man pause at a storefront, adjust his coat, then continue walking as if the moment had been exactly what it needed to be and nothing more. "Maybe," Anna said finally. "Or maybe we were wrong." The words felt heavier than she expected, as if speaking them made them more real than she was prepared for. Elise did not respond. She simply looked ahead, her silence no longer resistant, but unsettled. They passed a narrow cafe, its door slightly open. A faint warmth spilling onto the sidewalk along with the quiet sound of voices inside. Anna slowed just enough to notice it. The warmth was not just temperature. It was atmosphere. Contained. Shared. Chosen. She did not step toward it. She did not need to. The fact that it existed without her was enough. Captain Whitmore stopped again, this time near a row of iron railings that bordered a small park. The trees inside were bare, their branches thin against the gray sky, but there was a sense of space there that the streets did not offer. He turned slightly, his gaze moving across the group, not counting, not checking, simply acknowledging. "We will remain here for a moment," he said. Anna noticed the phrasing. Not stay, not wait. Remain. As if they were already part of the space they occupied. She stepped closer to the railing, her fingers hovering just above the cold metal before lightly touching it. The surface was smooth, worn by time, not by force. She traced it briefly, then let her hand fall back to her side. No reaction, no correction. The gesture had been hers alone. Inside the park, a woman walked slowly along a path, her hands tucked into her coat, her gaze forward. She passed beneath the trees without looking up, her movement steady, unremarkable. Anna watched her until she disappeared behind a bend. There was something in that movement she could not ignore. It was simple, but it was chosen. She turned slightly, looking back at the street they had crossed, at the path they had taken. It did not feel like a route anymore. It felt like a series of moments. Each one separate, each one unforced. Her hand moved again to her wrist, but this time the touch was different. Not searching, not expecting, just noticing. The skin was warm, alive, hers. She let her hand rest there for a second longer than before, then lowered it without urgency. Captain Whitmore stood a few feet away, his posture unchanged, his attention divided between them and the world around them. Anna studied him again, more carefully this time. He did not fill the silence. He did not define the moment. He allowed it. That, she was beginning to understand, was the point. Not control, not absence of control. Something in between. Something deliberate. A carriage passed behind them, its wheels softer now, as if the sound itself had learned to belong. Anna listened to it fade, then shifted her weight slightly, her stance no longer rigid, no longer prepared for interruption. She looked at Elise, who had stepped closer to the railing as well, her posture still guarded, but less so than before. "Do you feel it?" Anna asked quietly. Elise frowned slightly. "Feel what?" Anna hesitated, searching for the word. It was not freedom. Not yet. It was something quieter. "Space," she said finally. Elise looked around, her gaze moving across the street, the park, the people who moved without noticing them. She did not answer right away. Then, slowly, she nodded. Just once. The acknowledgement was small, but it carried weight. Anna turned back to the park, her eyes following the empty path where the woman had walked moments before. The absence there did not feel empty. It felt open. And for the first time, Anna understood that the absence at her wrist was not something that needed to be filled. It was something that needed to be carried. Carefully. Intentionally. Like everything else here. They remained by the railing longer than Anna expected, though no one marked the time. There was no clock visible, no signal to measure the passing of minutes. Yet something subtle shifted in the air. The light changed slightly, the gray softening as if the sky itself had exhaled. Anna noticed it not with her eyes first, but with her breath. It felt easier, less guarded. The space around her did not press in anymore. It held. That difference, quiet and precise, settled deeper than any explanation could reach. A breeze moved through the park, light but present, brushing against the branches above and carrying a faint scent of damp earth. Anna closed her eyes for a brief moment, just long enough to feel it without interruption. No voice called her back. No command corrected her stillness. When she opened them again, nothing had changed. And that was the change. Elise shifted beside her, her hand resting lightly against the iron railing now, no longer hovering. The tension in her shoulders had lowered, not completely, but enough to notice. "How long?" she asked quietly. Anna understood the question without needing clarification. How long until this ends? How long until the rules return? She did not have an answer. She looked toward Captain Whitmore. Instead, he stood with the same steady posture, his gaze moving across the park, then back to the street, then briefly to them. Not checking, not counting, simply aware. "As long as it is needed," he said, as if he had heard the question even though it had not been directed at him. The words landed differently this time. Needed. Not allowed. Not permitted. Needed. Anna let them settle. The distinction mattered more now than before. She turned back toward the park, watching as another figure entered from the far side. A man walking slowly, his hands behind his back, his steps measured but unforced. He followed the path without hesitation, as if he had walked it many times before. There was familiarity in his movement, but not routine. Choice, repeated often enough to become natural. Anna followed his path with her eyes, noting how he adjusted slightly to avoid a patch of uneven ground, how he paused briefly beneath one of the trees, then continued without looking back. Nothing in his movement suggested awareness of being watched. He simply existed within his own rhythm. Anna felt something align within her, something that had been unsettled since the moment the truck doors opened. This was not performance. It was not designed for them. It was not meant to prove anything. It simply was. The realization carried a weight that was both grounding and disorienting. If this was real, then everything she had expected had been built on something that no longer held. Her hand moved again to her wrist, but this time she did not look down. She felt it instead. The absence, the space, the responsibility. Her fingers rested there, not searching, not bracing, just acknowledging. She lowered her hand slowly, her posture shifting almost imperceptibly, her shoulders settling into a position that did not anticipate correction. Captain Whitmore stepped closer, not abruptly, not with purpose that demanded attention, but enough to enter her immediate awareness. "We will return shortly," he said. The word return echoed differently than expected. It did not carry the weight of confinement. It carried direction, continuity. Anna turned her head slightly. "Return where?" she asked. The question felt important now, not out of fear, but out of understanding. Whitmore met her gaze, his expression unchanged, but his eyes held something clearer now. "To where you were staying," he said. "Not camp. Not prison. Staying." The language mattered. Anna noticed it immediately. She held his gaze for a moment longer, then nodded once. Not agreement. Not submission. Acknowledgement. He stepped back again, allowing the space to exist once more. The group began to shift, not all at once, but gradually, each woman adjusting her stance, preparing to move without needing to be told. Anna remained still for a second longer, her eyes moving across the park one final time. The path, the trees, the absence that was not empty. She turned, stepping away from the railing, her movement steady, unforced. As she joined the others, she noticed something else. The way they moved had changed. It was subtle. Their steps no longer matched perfectly. Their spacing was no longer exact. Each carried her own rhythm now, slightly different, slightly independent. The formation had softened. Not broken, but no longer rigid. Anna fell into step beside Elise again, their shoulders nearly aligned. Neither spoke. Words felt unnecessary now, or perhaps insufficient. They walked back toward the street, the sounds of the city rising to meet them once more. A door closed somewhere. A voice called out in the distance. A bicycle passed with a soft whir of motion. All of it felt less distant now, less separate. As they approached the crossing again, Anna slowed slightly, not out of hesitation, but out of awareness. She watched the flow of people, the adjustments, the unspoken coordination. Then she stepped forward at the right moment, not because she had been told, but because she understood. The movement was smooth, natural, hers. Halfway across, she realized something she had not expected. She was no longer waiting for the chains. The thought had been constant before, a quiet expectation beneath every movement. Now it was gone. Not suppressed. Not denied. Simply absent. The realization did not bring relief. It brought clarity. She reached the other side and continued walking, her steps steady, her breath even. Her hand did not rise to her wrist this time. It remained at her side, relaxed, open. And for the first time since the journey began, Anna understood that what had been removed was not just metal. It was the certainty that she needed it. The walk back did not feel like a return. It felt like continuation. Anna noticed it immediately, not in the streets, not in the buildings, but in herself. The path they followed was familiar now, yet it did not carry the weight it had before. Each step no longer measured distance from something. It simply existed as it was. The city moved around them in the same quiet rhythm, unchanged, indifferent, alive. A man leaned against a doorway, reading a folded newspaper, his attention fixed on the printed lines. A woman adjusted the collar of her coat as she passed, her gaze forward, her pace steady. Nothing reached for Anna. Nothing needed to. That absence had become something she could move within without resistance. Beside her, Elise's posture had shifted again, almost imperceptibly, her shoulders no longer drawn upward, her hands no longer held close to her body. The change was small, but it carried meaning. They were no longer walking as one unit held together by expectation. They were moving as individuals sharing the same space. Anna felt it in the spacing between them, in the way their steps no longer aligned perfectly, in the way silence no longer felt like tension but like presence. Ahead, Captain Whitmore slowed slightly, allowing the distance between him and the group to close without signaling it. Anna noticed how natural the adjustment felt, how it required no instruction. She studied the movement, the quiet awareness that guided it, and realized it was the same pattern she had seen at the crossing, the same unspoken coordination. Necessary, not expected. They turned back onto the street where the truck had first stopped. Anna recognized the angle of the buildings, the shape of the pavement, the way the light settled between the structures. But it did not feel the same. The memory of that first moment remained, sharp and clear, but it no longer defined the space. The place had not changed. She had. The truck was still there, parked along the curb, its metal surface dull under the gray sky. It looked smaller now, less imposing, not because it had changed, but because her understanding of it had shifted. It was no longer the beginning of something unknown. It was simply part of the day. Anna slowed as they approached, her gaze moving from the truck to her hands, then back again. Her fingers remained relaxed at her sides. No instinct to brace. No expectation of weight. The absence at her wrists had settled into something stable, something that no longer demanded attention. It was simply there, like the air, like the space between steps. One of the women ahead of her hesitated briefly near the back of the truck, her body pausing as if waiting for instruction that did not come. Then she climbed in on her own. The movement was careful, but it was chosen. Anna watched it, noting the difference. No one pushed. No one directed. The action belonged to the woman herself. Anna stepped closer, her hand brushing lightly against the edge of the truck as she prepared to climb in. The metal was cool beneath her fingers, familiar, but it did not carry the same meaning anymore. She pulled herself up and stepped inside, turning to sit along the side as she had before. The interior looked unchanged. The same narrow space, the same worn surfaces, the same faint smell of oil and fabric. But it did not feel like a container anymore. It felt like a passage. The other women settled in, each choosing her place without instruction, without alignment. Elise sat across from Anna, her gaze meeting hers for a brief moment. There was something new there. Not certainty, not comfort, but recognition. Anna nodded slightly, a gesture that did not need explanation. Captain Whitmore remained outside for a moment longer, his figure visible through the open doors. He spoke quietly with one of the drivers, his tone even, his posture relaxed. No urgency, no tension, just coordination. Then he turned and stepped up into the truck, taking a position near the back, not above them, not separate, but within the same space. The doors remained open for a few seconds longer, allowing the outside world to remain visible. Anna looked out, her eyes tracing the street, the buildings, the people who continued their lives without interruption. The same man with the newspaper had turned a page. The woman with the coat had disappeared around the corner. The city did not hold the moment. It moved on. The doors closed. The sound was soft, final but not harsh. The light dimmed slightly, replaced by the enclosed quiet of the truck. Anna did not feel the tightening she had expected. Her breath remained steady, her posture unchanged. The engine started, the vibration returning beneath her feet, familiar now, almost grounding. The truck began to move, pulling away from the curb, rejoining the flow of the city. Anna leaned back slightly, her gaze lifting toward the small opening where light filtered in. Her hand moved once, briefly, toward her wrist, then stopped halfway. She lowered it again without touching. There was no need. The check was no longer necessary. The realization settled quietly, deeper than before. Across from her, Elise mirrored the stillness, her hands resting loosely in her lap, her gaze no longer scanning, but observing. The tension that had once defined her posture had softened into something else. Not ease. Not yet. But possibility. Anna closed her eyes for a brief moment, just long enough to feel the motion of the truck without seeing it. The movement carried her forward, but it did not pull her back. When she opened her eyes again, she did not look at her wrists. She looked ahead, and for the first time, she understood that the absence she carried was not something temporary. It was something that would follow her, not as a loss, but as a choice she would have to make again and again, long after the journey ended. The motion of the truck settled into a steady rhythm, a low vibration that traveled through the metal floor and into Anna's body, not jarring, not demanding, just present. She sat without bracing, without preparing for impact that never came. Across from her, Elise leaned back slightly, her shoulders no longer drawn inward, her hands resting open against her knees. No one spoke. The silence inside the truck was not empty. It was full of something unspoken, something each of them was holding in her own way. Outside, the city moved past in fragments of light and shadow, glimpses through narrow openings, shapes passing without context. Anna did not try to follow them. She did not need to see where they were going. For the first time, the destination did not feel like the point. The movement itself was enough. She became aware of her breathing again, not because it was uneven, but because it was steady. Inhale, exhale. No interruption. No anticipation. Just rhythm. The same rhythm she had noticed in the street, in the crossing, in the park. It was here too. Inside the truck. Inside her. Captain Whitmore shifted slightly near the back, adjusting his stance as the truck turned. The movement was small, balanced, controlled without effort. Anna watched it without meaning to, her attention drawn to the way he moved within the space rather than against it. He did not resist the motion. He responded to it. The realization echoed something she had begun to understand outside. Control was not force. It was awareness. It was adjustment. It was knowing when not to act. She lowered her gaze, her hands resting loosely now, her fingers no longer curled inward. The memory of the chain returned briefly, not as expectation, but as contrast. The weight, the restriction, the certainty of it. It had defined every movement, every step, every pause. Without it, there had been confusion. then tension, then something else, something quieter, something she could not name at first. Now it had a shape. Responsibility. The words settled in her mind, not imposed, not explained, but recognized. The absence of the chain did not remove control. It transferred it. The thought was clear, and it did not frighten her. It grounded her. Across from her, Elise spoke, her voice low, almost hesitant. When we return, she paused, the rest of the sentence unfinished. Anna looked up. Yes, she said gently, not pushing, not filling the space. Elise exhaled slowly, her gaze dropping to her own hands. Will it be the same? The question lingered in the air, heavier than its words. Anna did not answer immediately. She considered the meaning behind it, not just the surface. The camp, the routines, the structure they had known, the certainty of it. She thought of the square, the crossing, the park, the absence that had become something else. It will be what it is, Anna said finally. The words were simple, but they carried something steady beneath them. Not reassurance, not denial, just truth. Elise nodded slightly, though her expression remained uncertain. The truck slowed, the change in motion subtle, but unmistakable. Anna felt it through the floor, through the shift in balance, through the quiet adjustment of Whitmore's stance. They were nearing something, not an end, a point. The engine lowered in tone, the movement easing as the truck turned once more. Anna did not look toward the doors. She did not prepare for what would come next. She remained where she was, present in the moment that still existed. That, she realized, was the difference. Before, every moment had been a transition, a step towards something else, something to endure or anticipate. Now, the moment itself held its own weight. The truck came to a stop. The engine idled, a soft hum filling the enclosed space. No one moved immediately. The stillness that followed was not tense. It was deliberate. Anna felt it settle, the way everything they had experienced seemed to gather into this quiet pause. The doors opened. Light entered again, softer now, filtered through a different angle of the day. Anna turned her head slightly, not quickly, not with urgency, just enough to see the space outside. It was not the same street they had left. The buildings were simpler, the space more contained. A fence stood at a distance, not looming, not oppressive, just present. The place they were staying. She noticed the difference in the word again. Staying. Not held. Not kept. Staying. One of the women stood, then another, each movement unforced, chosen. Anna rose as well, her posture steady, her hands relaxed at her sides. She stepped toward the open door, her foot finding the edge, then the ground below. The air outside felt the same, but she felt it differently. She did not pause. She did not wait. She stepped forward. The others followed, their movements no longer synchronized, but aligned in something deeper than habit. Captain Whitmore stepped down last, his presence closing the space without enclosing it. Anna walked a few steps ahead, then slowed, turning slightly as if to take in the place with new eyes. The fence was there. The boundary was real, but it did not feel like the same kind of limit she had known before. It was defined. It was visible. It did not need to be enforced through her body. That difference mattered. Her hand did not move to her wrist. It did not need to. She knew what was not there. She knew what had replaced it. She looked toward the entrance, then back at the space behind her, the city now out of sight, but not out of reach. The memory of it remained, not as something distant, but as something that had changed her. She turned forward again and began to walk. Not because she was told, because she chose to. The gate did not close behind them with force. It settled into place with a quiet, almost indifferent sound, like something that had done its job for so long it no longer needed to prove it. Anna heard it, but she did not turn. The sound did not pull her back the way it once would have. It registered, then passed. She continued walking forward, her steps measured, steady, her gaze moving across the grounds with a clarity she had not carried before. The place was the same buildings, the same paths worn into the earth by repetition, the same routines waiting just beneath the surface. But the meaning had shifted. That was what she felt now, not change in the world, but change in how it held her. Around her, the other women moved in, some slowing as they crossed the boundary, others pausing briefly as if something invisible had brushed against them. Elise stopped for a moment, her head turning slightly, her eyes scanning the familiar structures with a new kind of attention. Not fear, not relief, something in between. Anna noticed it, but did not interrupt. There was nothing to explain. Each of them would understand it in her own way. A guard stood near the entrance, his posture straight, his hands resting loosely behind his back. He glanced at them as they entered, then looked away. No inspection, no counting, no voice marking their return. The absence was consistent. Intentional. Anna felt it again, the quiet weight of that decision. Not enforced. Chosen. Captain Whitmore walked past the guard with a brief nod, an exchange so subtle it barely existed. The guard returned it just as quietly. No words. No assertion of rank. Just acknowledgement. Anna followed, her steps aligning with the path without needing direction. The ground beneath her boots felt firm, familiar, but it did not anchor her the way it once had. It supported her movement. That difference was enough. They reached the main building, its doors slightly ajar, the interior dim compared to the open space outside. One by one, the women entered. Anna paused just before stepping inside, her gaze lifting slightly, taking in the sky above for a fraction of a second longer. The gray had not lifted, but it did not feel heavy anymore. It felt present. She stepped inside. The air shifted immediately. Warmer. Still. The sounds outside softened into something distant, replaced by the quiet interior of a place designed for containment, for routine, for order. Anna felt the contrast, but it did not press against her. It existed alongside what she had just experienced, not replacing it. Elise moved ahead of her, her steps slower now, more deliberate, as if she were testing each movement against something new. Anna followed, her posture unchanged, her hands still relaxed at her sides. They entered the common room, the familiar arrangement of benches and tables waiting exactly as it had before. Nothing had been altered. No sign remained of where they had been. That, Anna realized, was the point. The change was not here. It was within them. She moved toward one of the benches and sat down, her movement unforced, her body settling into the space without resistance. Her hands rested on her knees, her fingers open, her posture upright, but not rigid. Across the room, one of the women sat more quickly than before, her body dropping into the bench as if seeking the certainty of something solid. Another remained standing, her gaze moving across the room, searching for something she could not yet name. Elise stood near the doorway for a moment longer, then stepped in fully, the threshold crossing marked only by her breath, which she released slowly, as if letting something go. Anna watched her, then looked down at her own hands. The absence at her wrists was still there. It had not changed, but her relationship to it had. She did not check it. She did not question it. She acknowledged it. That was enough. Captain Whitmore entered last, his presence filling the doorway for a brief moment before he stepped aside, allowing the space to remain open. He did not address them immediately. He did not gather them, did not instruct them. He simply stood, observing, as he had outside. The same principle applied here. The same restraint. Anna looked up at him, meeting his gaze briefly. There was no exchange of words, but something passed between them. Recognition. Not of identity. Of understanding. He nodded once, almost imperceptibly, then turned slightly, his attention moving to the room as a whole. The silence held. Not empty. Not waiting. Just present. Anna leaned back slightly, her shoulders resting against the bench, her breath steady. The memory of the city remained clear, not fading, not distant. It sat beside her, as real as the wood beneath her hands. She could recall the crossing, the square, the park, the movements, the choices, the absence that had become something else. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, not to escape, but to hold it. When she opened them again, nothing had changed in the room. And yet everything had. She placed her hands flat against her knees, grounding herself in the present, in the space she occupied now. The boundary was still there. The routine would continue. But it would not be the same. Because she was not the same. Her hand did not move to her wrist. It did not need to. She knew what was not there. And more importantly, she knew what was. The room did not demand anything from them. And that was what made it different now. Before, every space had carried expectation, even in silence. Sit here. Stand there. Wait. Respond. The rules had not always been spoken, but they had always been present, shaping every movement before it happened. Now, the same room held none of that weight. The benches were the same. The walls were the same. The air was the same. But the pressure was gone. Anna sat with her back resting lightly against the wood, her posture upright but unguarded, her breathing steady. She did not fill the silence. She let it exist. Across the room, Elise finally moved, stepping away from the doorway and taking a seat at the far end of the same bench. Not close, not distant, just enough space to remain herself. That, Anna realized, was new. Space that did not need to be measured or defended. One of the other women crossed the room slowly, pausing near the window, her fingers brushing the edge of the frame as if confirming it was real. Another sat with her hands clasped tightly, her shoulders still held high, as if the old structure might return at any moment. The difference between them was visible now, not in their clothing, not in their positions, but in how they carried themselves. Anna watched without judgment. Each of them was adjusting. Each of them was learning something that could not be taught. Captain Whitmore remained near the entrance, his presence quiet, his posture unchanged. He did not step forward. He did not gather them. He allowed the room to settle on its own. That choice, Anna understood now, was not absence. It was intention. She leaned forward slightly, her elbows resting on her knees, her hands hanging loosely between them. The position felt natural, unforced. She looked down at the floor, the worn wood marked by years of movement, and for a moment, she saw it differently. Not as a surface that held her in place, but as one that simply existed beneath her. That shift, small as it was, carried weight. The door behind Whitmore remained open, just enough to let in a thin line of light and the faint sounds from outside. A voice passed in the distance. A door closed somewhere else. The world beyond the room had not disappeared. It remained, connected, even if it was no longer visible. Anna noticed how that connection felt. Not distant, not unreachable, just there. Elise spoke again, her voice softer now, less certain, but more present. It does not feel the same, she said, almost to herself. Anna looked up, her gaze moving toward her. No, she replied quietly. Elise lifted her eyes, meeting Anna's for a moment. But nothing has changed. The words held confusion, but also something else. Recognition. Anna considered them carefully. The room, the structure, the routine that would return. All of it remained. Something has, Anna said. She did not elaborate. She did not need to. Elise held her gaze a second longer, then nodded slowly. The understanding was not complete, but it had begun. Anna leaned back again, her shoulders resting lightly against the bench, her hands returning to her knees. Her fingers remained open, relaxed, as if they no longer needed to prepare for anything. The memory of the day moved through her again, not in fragments, but as a continuous line. The truck, the street, the crossing, the square, the park, the return, each moment connected, each one building something she could now feel, but still struggled to fully define. It was not freedom. The boundary still existed. The structure still stood, but the meaning of it had shifted. That was what mattered. She closed her eyes briefly, not to escape, but to hold the clarity of it. When she opened them again, the room was unchanged. The women were where they had been. Whitmore still stood near the entrance. The light still fell across the floor in the same narrow line. But the weight of it was different. Lighter. Not removed. Just redistributed. Anna's hand lifted slightly, not fully, just enough for her fingers to hover near her wrist. The gesture paused there, suspended between habit and awareness. Then, slowly, she lowered it again without making contact. The movement was deliberate. Chosen. Across the room, one of the women noticed, her gaze lingering on Anna's hand for a moment before returning to her own. The observation passed without comment, but it remained. Small changes were becoming visible. Subtle but real. Captain Whitmore finally stepped forward, not abruptly, not to interrupt, but to mark a shift. His voice, when it came, was calm, even, carrying the same tone it had outside. You will have your usual evening schedule, he said. The words were familiar, expected, but they did not land the same way. They did not define the moment. They simply outlined what would come next. Anna listened, not with tension, not with resistance, but with understanding. The structure would return. The routine would continue. But she would not enter it the same way she had before. That difference, quiet and steady, remained within her. Whitmore paused, his gaze moving across the room, then resting briefly on Anna. Not as a signal, not as recognition of rank or role, just acknowledgement. Then he stepped back again, returning to his place near the entrance, allowing the space to hold once more. The silence returned, but it was no longer the same silence that had filled the room when they first entered. It carried something now. Awareness. Choice. Anna remained seated, her posture steady, her breath even, her hands still. She did not look at her wrist again. She did not need to. She knew what was no longer there, and she was beginning to understand what had taken its place. The schedule resumed without announcement, yet everyone felt it begin. A subtle shift in movement, in posture, in attention. One woman stood and moved toward the far table where utensils had already been placed, her steps measured but no longer rigid. Another followed, not because she was told, but because the pattern had returned in a form that now made sense. Anna remained seated for a moment longer, observing. Not the objects, not the room, the choices, the way each woman decided when to move, how to enter the familiar structure without being pulled into it completely. That was the difference. The routine was the same. The entry into it was not. She leaned forward slightly, placing her hands against her knees, then stood. The motion was simple, unremarkable, but it belonged to her. She walked toward the table, her steps steady, her gaze forward, her awareness wide but not strained. The room held its quiet rhythm, the low sounds of movement, the soft contact of objects, the faint shift of air as bodies adjusted within the space. No one spoke loudly. No one needed to. Anna reached the table and picked up a cup, her fingers wrapping around it without hesitation. The surface was cool, familiar. She placed it down in front of her chosen seat, then sat. Across from her, Elise did the same, her movements slower but no longer uncertain. They did not look at each other immediately. They did not need to confirm anything. The shared understanding had moved beyond words. A woman to Anna's left adjusted the position of a small plate, aligning it carefully with the edge of the table, then paused, as if noticing her own precision. She let out a small breath and shifted it slightly off-center. The change was minimal, but intentional. Anna noticed. The old pattern had been exact. The new one allowed variation. That, too, mattered. Captain Whitmore remained near the entrance, his presence unchanged, his attention steady but not intrusive. He did not oversee the routine. He allowed it to unfold. That distinction had become clear. The room did not belong to authority. It belonged to the people within it. Anna lifted the cup, bringing it closer, pausing for a moment before taking a sip. The taste was simple, warm, real. She swallowed, then placed it back down, her movements unhurried. Around her, the others did the same, each action part of a structure that no longer pressed against them, but supported them. Elise finally looked up, her eyes meeting Anna's. "It feels different," she said again, but this time there was no question in her voice. Anna nodded. "Yes." Elise glanced down at her hands, turning them slightly as if seeing them for the first time. "I keep expecting." She stopped, her fingers brushing lightly against her wrist. The gesture was familiar. Anna understood it immediately. "I know," Anna said quietly. Elise looked up again. "But it does not come." Anna followed her gaze, then looked down at her own hands. Her wrists remained bare, unchanged, but no longer demanding attention. "No," she said. The simplicity of it carried more than reassurance. It carried truth. The room continued its quiet activity. Someone moved to the far side, adjusting a chair. Another leaned back slightly, her posture relaxed in a way that would have been unthinkable before. Small shifts, subtle changes, each one marking something deeper than the surface. Anna became aware of her own posture again, the way her shoulders rested, the way her breath moved through her without interruption. She was not holding herself in place anymore. She was simply there. The difference was not visible from the outside, but it was everything. The door remained open, the thin line of light still cutting across the floor. Anna glanced toward it, her eyes following the line to where it met the wall. The outside world was still present, even here, even now. Not as something distant, but as something connected. That connection did not pull her away from the room. It expanded it. Captain Whitmore shifted slightly, stepping forward just enough to speak. "You will continue as you have," he said, his voice even, his tone unchanged. The instruction was minimal. It did not redefine anything. It simply acknowledged what was already happening. Anna listened, then returned her attention to the table. The routine moved forward, but it did not carry her with it. She moved within it. That distinction remained clear. She lifted her cup again, taking another sip, her movements steady, her awareness present. Across from her, Elise mirrored the action, her hands no longer tense, her fingers no longer gripping. The space between them felt different now, not filled with uncertainty, but with something quieter. Understanding. Anna placed the cup down once more, her fingers releasing it without hesitation. She did not check her wrist. She did not need to. The absence had become part of her awareness, not separate from it. It did not require confirmation. It required something else. Something she was only beginning to understand. Around her, the room continued. The same objects. The same actions. The same structure. But within it, something had shifted, something that could not be reversed by routine alone. Anna leaned back slightly, her hands resting on her lap, her gaze steady. The day had not changed the world. It had changed her place within it. And that change did not fade when the door closed or the schedule resumed. It remained. Quiet. Steady. Present. Like the absence at her wrists, it did not demand attention. But it would shape everything that came next. The room settled into evening without announcing it. The light near the doorway shifted, stretching thinner across the floor, losing its sharp edge as the day moved quietly forward. No one marked the change out loud, but everyone felt it. The rhythm slowed. Movements became softer, more deliberate, as if the space itself was easing into something calmer. Anna remained seated, her hands resting loosely in her lap, her fingers still, her posture balanced without effort. Around her, the others continued their small routines, adjusting chairs, clearing cups, aligning objects not out of necessity, but out of habit that had softened into choice. Elise stood near the table, her hands hovering for a moment above the surface before she lowered them, leaving things as they were. That, Anna noticed, was new. Not correcting. Not perfecting. Allowing. Captain Whitmore remained near the entrance, his presence unchanged, steady as it had been from the beginning. He had not imposed anything on them. He had not taken anything away. He had simply revealed something they had not been allowed to see before. That difference lingered in the room, not as a statement, but as a quiet understanding that moved through each of them in its own way. Anna leaned forward slightly, placing her palms against her knees, feeling the contact, the weight, the reality of where she was. The boundary still existed. The structure still held, but it no longer defined her movement. It no longer filled the space inside her. That space had changed. Across from her, Elise finally sat again, her posture relaxed in a way that carried no tension. She looked at Anna, not searching for answers this time, but sharing something unspoken. Anna met her gaze and held it for a moment. No explanation passed between them. It was not needed. The understanding had already formed. The absence at their wrists had become something else entirely. It was no longer something to notice. It was something to carry. The room grew quieter. The small sounds of movement faded, replaced by stillness that did not feel empty. It felt complete. Anna allowed herself to sit within it, not preparing for what would come next, not anticipating the return of anything that had once defined her. She was simply there, present, aware. Enough. Her hand moved once more, slowly this time, rising toward her wrist. The gesture was not automatic. It was intentional. Her fingers hovered just above the skin, close enough to feel the warmth, but not touching. She paused there, feeling the space, the absence, the meaning it now carried. Then, gently, she lowered her hand back to her lap. The movement was small, final. She did not need to check anymore. She did not need to confirm what she already understood. The chains had not been removed from her because someone allowed it. They had been removed because they were no longer necessary. That truth settled deeper than anything else. Captain Whitmore stepped forward one last time, not to speak, not to instruct, but simply to stand within the same space as them. For a moment, he looked at the room, at the women, at the quiet that had formed without his direction. Then he gave a small nod, almost to himself, and turned toward the door. He did not close it. He left it open as he stepped out, the thin line of light remaining where it was, connecting the inside to the outside without dividing them. Anna watched him go, not with attachment, not with expectation, but with recognition. He had not changed her. He had shown her something she would now have to carry on her own. The room remained. The routine would continue. The boundaries would not disappear. But none of that could return things to what they had been before. because she would not step into them the same way again. Anna leaned back against the bench, her shoulders resting, her breath steady, her gaze calm. Around her, the others sat or stood in their own quiet awareness, each holding something that could not be taken from them. The absence remained at her wrists, but it no longer felt like something missing. It felt like something gained. Not freedom. Not yet. Something deeper. Something quieter. Something that did not need to be seen to exist. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, letting the stillness settle fully, then opened them again. Nothing in the room had changed. And yet everything had. She did not raise her voice. She did not resist. She did not need to. She had understood. And that was enough.